There is a country on earth right now that is legally, diplomatically, and technologically preparing for the possibility that it will cease to exist. Not lose a war, not collapse economically, simply run out of land. It's called Tuvalu, and almost no one has heard of it, which is strange, because what it's doing has never been attempted by any nation in human history. Tuvalu sits in the middle of the Pacific between Hawaii and Australia. 9 islands, home to about 11,000 people. Its entire landmass, all 9 islands combined, covers 26 square kilometers. That is smaller than most airports. Its average height above sea level is under 2 meters. Its highest natural point on its whole highest island is less than 5 meters. One foreign affairs official put it bluntly, there are no mountains to climb to. The tallest thing you could stand on is a coconut tree. In the capital, the strip of land people actually live on narrows in places to about 20 meters wide. Ocean on one side, lagoon on the other, a road down the middle. This isn't a metaphor for vulnerability. It is the literal geography. And because of that geography, Tuvalu has become the first government on earth building a legal, physical, and digital contingency plan for a country that might not have any ground left to stand on. Before we get to what they're doing about it, you need to understand what's actually at stake, because this isn't an empty stretch of sand. It's a way of life that has existed for 2,000 or 3,000 years, and it looks nothing like the life most of you are watching this from. In Tuvaluan, there's a word, whenua. It means land. It also means community, belonging, home, all at once, because in that culture, those things were never separate ideas. Land isn't property here. It's held communally, passed through families, and many households bury their ancestors right beside the front door. To leave the land, in the deepest sense, is to leave your dead behind. Daily life runs on structures the West mostly abandoned centuries ago. Villages are governed by an assembly of elders, literally translated, the grey hairs of the land, meeting in an open community hall where decisions are made collectively. Work is divided among families for the benefit of everyone. Fishing, building, defense, assigned by tradition, not by market. Roughly 6 in 10 people fish for a living. Food comes from a pit-grown swamp taro called pulaka, from breadfruit, coconut, and the reef. And then there's the fatele, a dance and song performed at every gathering, where a group sits around a wooden box, drumming the beat while voices carry the melody, repeating and building, faster and louder, cycle after cycle, until it reaches something close to euphoria. It's performed for weddings, for visiting royalty, for grief. It is, in many ways, the sound of the culture itself. This is what losing a country actually means here. Not a line on a map disappearing, a grandmother's peace of mind, buried ancestors, a communal assembly hall, a dance that has been performed the same way for generations, all of it tied, physically and spiritually, to 26 square kilometers of coral and sand that the ocean is now reclaiming. So what's the actual science? NASA has been tracking this precisely, and the numbers are specific. Sea level around Tuvalu has risen about 15 centimeters in the last 30 years, roughly 1.5 times the global average rate. NASA's own scientists have stated plainly that Pacific nations like Tuvalu will see at least another 15 centimeters of rise in the next 30 years, regardless of what happens with emissions starting today. That much is already locked in. And an atoll doesn't fail the way a coastline fails. There's a thin layer of fresh groundwater sitting under the island called a freshwater lens, and rising seas are pushing saltwater up into it. Much of Tuvalu's groundwater is now too brackish to drink. Up to half of the traditional taro pits on the main atoll have been abandoned because the soil turned salty. During certain tides, seawater doesn't even need to come over the shore. It bubbles straight up through the porous coral ground, flooding streets on a clear sunny day. One Tuvaluan man born on the island of Nui has a memory that captures it perfectly. At his birth, his parents cut his umbilical cord in two and buried half of it at the base of a coconut tree near the shore, as tradition dictates. As a child, he watched that shoreline creep steadily closer to the spot. He said it felt like the sea was getting hungrier and hungrier. Now, in fairness to the full picture, a 2018 scientific study actually found Tuvalu's total land area grew slightly over 4 decades, because atolls are dynamic, storm-built landforms, not fixed rock. That finding matters, and we shouldn't ignore it. But growing land area and livable land are two different things. You can have more sand and still have undrinkable water, dead crops, and streets that flood on a calm afternoon. Both of those facts are true at the same time, and that's the uncomfortable, complicated reality Tuvalu actually lives inside. Faced with a problem no nation has faced before, Tuvalu has responded with a set of moves that sound almost like science fiction, except they're real and they're already happening. First, physically, Tuvalu is manufacturing new land. Using tens of millions of dollars in international climate financing, engineers dredged sand from the lagoon and built an entirely new elevated stretch of ground in the capital, roughly 8 hectares, engineered to stay above rising seas beyond the year 2100. When there's no higher ground to retreat to, the answer is to build higher ground. Second, legally and diplomatically. In 2023, Tuvalu signed a treaty with Australia, the first of its kind on Earth. In it, Australia formally recognizes that Tuvalu's statehood and sovereignty will continue, quote, notwithstanding the impact of climate change-related sea level rise. The treaty also opens a pathway for Tuvaluans to move to Australia. When the visa ballot opened in 2025, the response was staggering. Registrations, including family members, equaled roughly 82% of the country's entire population applying in a matter of weeks. And third, the strangest and most talked about move. Tuvalu announced it is building a digital version of itself. Government records, cultural archives, even a recreation of its islands, all preserved digitally, so that even in the worst-case scenario, the nation's governance and identity survive in some form. Its foreign minister put it directly: our land, our ocean, our culture are the most precious assets of our people, and to keep them safe, no matter what happens in the physical world, we will move them to the cloud. A nation building a backup of itself, land, law, and culture, each engineered against the possibility of total loss. Nothing like it has existed before. This raises a question international law was never built to answer. For centuries, being a country has required, among other things, having a defined territory. So what happens if the territory goes under the sea? Not through war, not through conquest, but simply because the water rose. Tuvalu isn't waiting for an answer to arrive by accident. In 2023, it amended its own constitution to declare that its statehood continues no matter what happens to its physical land. And in 2025, the International Court of Justice issued an opinion supporting exactly that idea, that a state established under international law does not automatically lose its status simply because one of the things that made it a state, its land, disappears. That opinion may end up mattering to more than just Tuvalu. Tuvalu isn't alone in this. Neighboring Kiribati faces the identical geography and the identical math. And in 2014, its president did something almost nobody noticed. He bought several thousand acres of land on an island in Fiji. Not for tourism, as a quiet, unspoken insurance policy for his own people, decades before they might need it. He called his country the canary in the coal mine. Not everyone in Tuvalu wants insurance policies. A 71-year-old grandmother on one of the outer islands was asked why she didn't apply for the Australian visa. She said simply, "We love our home. At 71, you have peace of mind. I feel peaceful." A young climate advocate put the tension even more plainly. "Migration is a good plan," she said, "but it's a last resort. We don't want to leave our country. Our culture and identity are tied to this land." So here is what Tuvalu actually represents. Not a warning delivered in a lecture. A living experiment in a question no government has ever had to answer. What is a nation exactly once you take away the ground it stands on? Is it the soil, the law, the people, the memory? Tuvalu is betting quietly and seriously that it's the last two, and it is building the legal and digital scaffolding to prove that bet correct, decades before anyone will know if it worked.